Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America. Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. Can you guys remember the last time you actually cared about Nancy Pelosi's opinion on politics? And I don't mean like in years because she's a Democrat or anything like that. I mean because of the authority that she presented herself with when she was Speaker of the House or the House Minority Leader for the Democrats when she was not in the Speaker's chair. Sure, she's sort of semi-retired now and is not in the forefront of the House Democratic leadership, but she's still around, right? And you would think that her opinion has some weight. But it feels like that cloak of invincibility that she's had has sort of faded as she herself has removed herself from leadership. And that's been pretty prevalent this week in particular, as Nancy Pelosi has been going through a pretty rough week, even though we're only at Wednesday. We're going to go through some of those moments that has Pelosi kind of shaken in the public eye. But before we do all that, I'm going to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. And if you like what you see and hear in this or any other video on the channel, smash that thumbs up button. Like, comment, share the show with your friends. All that good stuff that we like here, because all that helps us by feeding the YouTube algorithm.
It just needs to be fed.
So feed it!
As always, thank you guys so much for all that you do to help grow the channel. You know I really appreciate that. And for all you newbies out there who may have happened upon this very small political channel that is so close to 2,000 subscribers, I hope that this video earns your subscription as we talk about Nancy Pelosi's rough beginning to this week. We're going to be talking about two different stories involving Pelosi. The first one being this never-before-seen video from January 6th where Pelosi takes responsibility for the lack of preparedness at the Capitol by Capitol Police. And we're going to then go to an interview she did at MSNBC with Katty Tur that really shows that invincible appearance of Nancy Pelosi, that air of authority, is certainly gone. What you're about to watch is a previously unreleased video taken on January 6, 2021 that shows then Speaker Pelosi in a car saying that she takes responsibility for law enforcement's lack of preparedness when the Capitol was stormed with protesters and some called rioters and all that. Let's watch what happens here. Remember, these are events happening in real time. These are Nancy Pelosi's thoughts as things are occurring at the Capitol.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
Now, people have been making a lot of hay about this video of Pelosi taking responsibility for the lack of preparedness. But in actuality, if you know how the bureaucracy works in the House, Nancy Pelosi doesn't really have direct authority over the Capitol Police or their preparedness for any given event. That belongs to the Capitol Police Board, of which the House Sergeant at Arms also works with. So let's go back in time and talk about what happened here with this lack of preparedness that Pelosi is now taking responsibility for. Okay, I can already hear you guys screaming right now.
What the hell is she doing here?
I know Liz Cheney is the last person you want to hear from concerning J6, but hear me out for a second. Based upon this recently released video from the House Oversight Committee, there's new information that has to be integrated into the quote-unquote establishment story. I want to compare and contrast what Liz Cheney is saying, or what she did say, back during the J6 hearings, and see how it matches up to Pelosi's in real-time reaction to what was going on at the Capitol. So hold your breath a little bit, calm down, count to 10, and let's go back in time and listen to this interview with Bret Baier.
Is there a testimony already gathered on Speaker Pelosi's decisions or the Sergeant of Arms in the House and Senate on that regard?
Yeah, we have an entire team. We've got 5 different teams in the investigation. One of them is totally focused on all of those issues of security at the Capitol and the response of the Capitol Police, the response of the National Guard, the response of the Capitol Police Board, what was going on at the Pentagon that day. So it's an entire focus of the investigation. You will see in our report, you will likely see in upcoming hearings. And so it's certainly something that we're going to be very focused on. But what we aren't going to do, Brett, is blame the Capitol Police, blame those in law enforcement for Donald Trump's armed mob that he sent to the Capitol.
Okay.
So there's a non-answer from Cheney. I kind of expected that, and she turns it around back to Donald Trump because her addled TDS brain keeps going back to Donald Trump. It's her default position. We get that.
I think clearly there were intelligence failures. Clearly the security should have operated better than it did. But this was a mob Donald Trump sent to the Capitol, and I think that's important to keep our eye on.
There are several witnesses who say they met with President Trump on January 4th, and he offered some 20,000 National Guardsmen to protect the Capitol building on January 6th, but the offer was rejected. Is that true? Do you know that to be true?
Well, his own acting Secretary of Defense says that's not true. Chris Miller has testified publicly that Donald Trump never issued any order to deploy the Guard to protect the Capitol. And so I would point people to his own Secretary of Defense's public testimony. And we also know that on January 6th, while the attack was underway, Donald Trump did not place a single phone call to anyone at the Pentagon. He didn't place a single phone call to anyone at the Justice Department to say deploy law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she referenced the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense. He actually did state on national television that Donald Trump did have 20,000 National Guardsmen prepared and ready to go. Let's see if you remember this flashback. Now, obviously, this is an interview on Hannity, so you may want to take it with a grain of salt. It's up to you. But this is what Kash Patel, the former chief of staff of the then Defense Secretary, and former Defense Secretary Miller had to say concerning national security presence, or at least the preparedness of that presence prior to J6, as discussed with former President Trump.
In the Oval Office, that you heard Donald Trump authorize up to 20,000 troops, Kash Patel, 2 days before January 6th even happened. Tell us about that meeting.
Yeah, it's not one of those. Thanks again, Sean, like Chris said, for having us, especially on D-Day, to talk about this serious matter. It's not one of those meetings you forget. The Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, the Chief of Staff to the President of the United States of America, Mark Meadows, and the President of the United States himself in the Oval Office talking about some of the most serious national security threats we were facing. And then we pivoted to setting up for January 6th, and Mr. Trump unequivocally authorized up to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women for us to utilize should the second part of the law, the requests, come in. But those requests never did, as you highlighted.
Let me be very clear. Both of you said this under oath, under the threat of a penalty of perjury to the committee?
Oh, absolutely, Sean. And to be clear, Kash brought it up best. The meeting was one of the serious kind of heavy meetings I've been in, and it was about a foreign threat that was directed towards the United States, which obviously we can't talk to for fear of ended up in jail. And so I kind of want to be clear. The president, as we're leaving, it says, hey, one more thing, and we all sat back down and we discussed what was going on January 6th. I don't want to, because I think that's important to bring up.
It is important to bring up, and here's why. Remember when Cheney said that there was no call to the Pentagon to direct them to have the National Guard go to the Capitol?
Chris Miller has testified publicly that Donald Trump never issued any order to deploy the Guard to protect the Capitol.
Well, it turns out, according to the acting secretary and his then chief of staff, that in order for those National Guard troops to be deployed to the Capitol, they would have had to have been requested by the Capitol. That means the Capitol Police Board and presumably the Capitol Police Chief, the Sergeant at Arms of the House, the Sergeant at Arms at the Senate, and even Nancy Pelosi, who doesn't have direct authority over these people, but certainly would have some sway and influence over their decision making informally. Now, did that request go out? According to that Pelosi video, it looks like it never did. And we know that for a fact because the former chief of the Capitol Police said that even he, days before J6, requested that the Sergeant at Arms at the House and the Senate actually make that request, but it was refused.
Flashback. Now former Capitol Hill Police Chief Stephen Sund, who resigned last week, tells CNN and the Washington Post he was concerned about what was coming in the days before the siege. Sund says he asked his bosses, the House and Senate Sergeants at Arms, for permission to request that the National Guard be on close standby. Sund says they turned him down, concerned about the optics. Sund said that when the rioting was underway, he pleaded 5 more times for help, including to the Pentagon for National Guardsmen to be deployed. Quote, I needed boots on the ground, immediate assistance right then and there, helping to form police lines to help secure up the foundation of the United States Capitol building. They were more concerned with the optics.
End of flashback. Now, with the proper backfill and background information, I know we kind of took the long way around here, but it's important to recognize the significance of this real-time statement from Pelosi. Pelosi may not have had direct oversight or control over the Capitol Police or the Capitol Police Board or the Sergeant at Arms, but she was still the Speaker of the House, so she had to have some sway and influence over their decision-making processes. So when she talks about the lack of preparedness of the Capitol Police and therefore internalizes that in that video that we haven't seen before up until recently, and she says that she needs to take responsibility for that, it's not a formal chain of command responsibility, but it's the responsibility of the authority that she assumed as Speaker of the House over all of these Capitol functions. So in that respect, it seems like the January 6th report doesn't really reflect the full story about the preparedness at the Capitol or the response to what happened at the Capitol, because there was seemingly a breakdown between Pelosi, the Capitol Police, the Capitol Police Board, and the Sergeant at Arms, and their inability or their refusal, their outright refusal to request National Guard support for what would have happened 48 hours later. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but after all this time with all these hearings and all these meetings and 2 years worth of news coverage, that this never came out, that Pelosi never came out and said, I immediately took responsibility for what happened here immediately during the events of the day. We had to wait 4 years for this to come out.
This is a government cover-up.
It's kind of ridiculous and unreasonable. It goes to show why people don't have confidence in the commission's reporting on the causes of what happened at the Capitol, don't you think? But it got worse for Pelosi this week because not only is she taking hits on this self-assumed responsibility for the lack of preparedness at the Capitol, but she also did a one-on-one interview with MSNBC's Katty Tur. And let's just say the interview, though it was 15 minutes long, is only memorable to people for about a minute-long stretch that we're going to talk about after the break. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. Even though Pelosi's in semi-retirement, she still goes out there into the media every now and then to sort of stump for Joe Biden, whether it is talking about certain issues like abortion, talking about Donald Trump, whatever it is, she's a willing soldier for the Biden campaign, and she's going to go out into the media to sort of project that former air of influence and invincibility that she had as Speaker. But you can see all of that dissolve on camera in real time, once again, in this interview with MSDNC and Katty Tur.
There are those who have real legitimate concerns about immigration, globalization, innovation, and what does that mean for their job and their family's future? And we have to address those concerns. And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
Oh my goodness, Katty Tur committed one of the biggest sins of left-wing media. She checked Nancy Pelosi. This wouldn't have happened when Pelosi was Speaker of the House. No one would have dared shot back at her with different facts than what she's presenting. And look at Pelosi's face. She's absolutely shocked that someone dared to fact-check her in real time on MSDNC of all places. Who's running this joint lately? Clearly, it's not Nancy Pelosi. But you know what? She still has the feeling in herself that she has that air of authority as a former speaker, and she lashes out at Katty Tur.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine.
She is pissed off.
So Pelosi's response to this is to get louder and repeat the same point that was just debunked, and to accuse a reporter at MSDNC of being a Trump shill. Does that sound rational to anyone? This is clearly someone that is not used to someone challenging her authority, especially on live national television. But it goes to show you how the mighty has fallen in the pecking order of the Democrat leadership. Pelosi is no longer in that upper echelon. She's sort of seen as semi-retired. She's on her way out the door, riding into the sunset of California. And when she goes on these interviews, she doesn't wield the same influence over these reporters. She can't say, I'll never allow you access again to anything from the House Dem side. She doesn't have the ability to threaten or to lead with fear the way that she may have done in the past as Speaker. So going back at Katty Tur like this shows that the Empress no longer has any clothes, apparently. And I know that's a bad visual for everybody out there.
My eyes.
But it's kind of true. Pelosi doesn't have the power she once had.
And he has
think
the
that
worst.
anybody can accuse me of that.
Let me just say, as a Speaker of the House, we put forth a $3 trillion bill. $3 trillion of investment in communities and the rest, and that stimulates the economy.
So now she has to tout her own record. She doesn't remember exactly what she did. She remembers $3 trillion for something or other. And Katty Tur also pushed back. It was kind of hard to hear, saying that no one would accuse me, an MSDNC reporter, of being for Donald Trump. Although if you go on X, formerly known as Twitter, whatever you want to call it, people out there are really mad at Katty Tur for doing this, to the point where they're calling for her to be fired. They're saying that she's blue MAGA, as if there is such a thing. And it's the normal crap show on X. But point being, Pelosi got dressed down by a reporter, and there's really nothing she can do about it when you think about it, right? This is showing how the mighty has fallen here. Nancy Pelosi is no longer the same indomitable figure that she used to be. The House Republicans released a video that was made by her, taking responsibility for January 6th, that for some reason hadn't come to light in the past 4 years, which shows you the influence she had concerning the releasing of that video. And now reporters are openly challenging her on her statements when she's stumping for Joe Biden in the friendly confines of MSNBC. My, how the mighty have fallen, right? But listen, that's just my opinion on this whole situation. What do you guys think about this precipitous fall of Nancy Pelosi this week and all the knocks she's been taking? Let's get into the comments together to discuss it. And as always, like and share this video with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the shows. I'll see you guys in the comments about this video about Nancy Pelosi and all the other shenanigans and buffoonery happening every day this week in DUMBmocracy.
views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.